it's going to be a bit of a one-to-one. So I'm very happy to sort of tailor the presentation around you. Can you type in the box and just tell me whether you are from a primary school or a secondary school? Right, okay then. So I won't dwell too much then on the primary side of things because we haven't got a mixed audience. And so I'll concentrate on looking at how things are in the secondary sector with regards to funding and that sort of thing. And if you've got any questions, just type them into the box and I'll deal with them as we go along. And if you want me to stop and go over anything, then again, just type in the box and I'll deal with them as we go on, if that's okay with you. Just waiting for you to finish typing. To reapply. It's leaving. I believe it's customary for them to re-register at secondary school, but the schools should get the notification from primary that they have been in receipt of free school meals because you want to know whether they're, don't worry about your typing, whether they're ever six or not, so whether how long they've been in receipt of free school meals funding, because anybody that has been in receipt of it for at any time within sort of 6 years um, is in receipt of the funding, if that makes sense. But I say, do stop me if you want. Oops, if you want me to go over anything. As you can see from the title slide, I'm a school improvement advisor. I'm also a lead Ofsted inspector. I lead inspections, and I've done some sort of keynote speaking at large national conferences on the Pupil Premium. So I've got a fair idea of if you like, of what goes on in schools, the issues that they face, and also the sort of Ofsted angle on it, what Ofsted are looking for when they actually go into schools. Okay, so this is the detail, which is why it's important that you know from primary school whether they've been in receipt of free school meals, and this idea that they have been ever six. So any time in the last 6 years, then they are in receipt of the funding. That also is paid to children who are looked after by the local authority. And starting from sort of September of this year, the government's introduced a two-tier system of rates. Yes, you will get a copy of the slides, yep, and a recording of the training. That's it, no worries. So from 2014 to 2015, the government decided it was going to introduce differential rates for primary and secondary. So the primary funding actually is going to rise up to £1,300, whereas secondary funding is just going to see a much smaller rise, up to £935 per pupil. And I'll come on to that a little bit later on with regards to secondary. The reason that they decided to introduce this, because obviously, it's caused a bit of a, why should primary get more than secondary? And the reason is this idea, although they've dropped the terminology, that they want pupils to be ready for secondary school. And you'll know as a secondary practitioner, if you've got a lot of free students in receipt of free school meals, that actually a lot of them don't come secondary ready, and anybody that is working at below a level 4, and a lot of Pupil Premium pupils are because they underachieve, then they are the ones that are not ready to access the secondary curriculum and can't cope with it. But we know that the better their achievement, particularly if they can get a current level 4B, 4A, that they're going to do so much better, and it increases their chances of getting at least 5 good GCSEs or C+, grade GCSEs at the moment. So the idea is that they will put more resources into the system, and even a recognition that this needs to extend to the early years, that the earlier you can tackle the poverty and the sort of some of the underlying reasons for underachievement, then the better their chances are of coming to secondary. So that's the argument for the differential in the rate, and also therefore the idea that more as the funding at primary has more of an impact, therefore there should be less underachievement for secondary schools to tackle. But, you know, as a secondary practitioner myself, you know, we'll have to wait and see how well the primary schools do with their funding, frankly, because I think we both know that we get a lot of students that come through who aren't ready and able to access the curriculum very easily, and a high proportion of those will be on free school meals. So why is it coming under scrutiny? It's under a lot of scrutiny, the funding and the impact of the funding, for exactly the reasons that I've just been talking about. There are concerns as the funding is now into its sort of third or fourth academic year coming up. Where is the evidence of the impact? And, you know, particularly if you're going to give extra money to the primary schools, it's got to be having an impact so that secondary schools aren't having to deal with those levels of underachievement and still having huge gaps to try and close. So what is looked for is schools showing how the spending is having an impact in their school on closing the gap between those pupils on free school meals and those pupils who are not in receipt of free school meals. And we know that Sir Michael Wilshaw has said pupils known to be eligible for free school meals, if they are not making at least good progress, then if and when a school is inspected, it's going to be very unlikely that they are going to be judged outstanding. And actually, it becomes increasingly difficult, depending on how big the gaps are, for them to actually be judged to be good, because there's a sort of a significant proportion of very vulnerable children who aren't making at least good progress. The reference on the slide says page 26 of the School Inspection Handbook, January 2014. Actually, that was updated. Well, the handbook was updated again in April, and that reference is on page 27 of the April version, but the wording hasn't changed. So we're looking for impact. Why make a fuss? Well, because we know that this group of pupils underperforms when compared to their peers. In some very affluent parts of the country, so the leafy suburbs, it's really quite scandalous, I think, that less than 60% of disadvantaged pupils actually achieve level 4 or more in English and Maths at the end of Key Stage 2. That's an awful lot of pupils not secondary ready when they move up to secondary school. And that's a 20% gap for the non-eligible pupils. That's nationally, obviously. And then when they looked at some of the information coming through from local authorities, there's a large number, 17, where less than 30% of disadvantaged pupils got a grade C or better in English and Maths in 2012. And also in 2012, we can see that more than 5% of disadvantaged pupils got an A or A star in only 11 LAs. So, you know, in terms of the very top grades, very few of those pupils are getting there. And I think that's why, at least there's been quite a lot going on with the DFE and the Pupil Premium guru for the government, Sir John Dunsford. They've been working with LAs as well to try and get them to have more influence and do more coordinated support with schools, of course bearing in mind that they haven't got access to academies. And I'm not sure, do you work, if you would type, are you in an academy or a maintained school? Just out of interest, really.